The rain drummed steadily against the roof of the forward operating base in Korangal Valley, Afghanistan. Captain Ryan Mitchell, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of the tactical lamp, stared at the personnel file with undisguised skepticism. 18 years as a Navy SEAL had taught him to trust his instincts, and everything in his battle-hardened soul told him this was wrong. A female sniper for an alpha-level mission? Mitchell's voice cut through the ambient noise of the command center. Is this Pentagon's idea of a joke? Colonel Barnes, the base commander, met Mitchell's gaze without flinching. The silver-haired veteran had survived 3 wars and politics that were often more dangerous than combat. The mission requires the best we have, Barnes replied evenly. According to that file, Rivers is the best. Mitchell flipped through the pages again, studying the photograph of Emma Rivers. 28 years old, with hazel eyes that seemed to calculate even from the static image. Her service record was impressive. Perfect scores at sniper school, multiple confirmed kills at extreme distances during training exercises. But Mitchell had seen impressive records fail under the pressure of actual combat. Sir, with all due respect, my men have trained together for years, inserting an unknown element. This isn't a debate, Captain, Barnes interrupted. Direct orders from command, you deployed at 500 hours. Mitchell closed the file with a controlled snap. Yes, sir. 5 hours later, as dawn broke over the jagged mountains, Mitchell's 8-man team moved silently through the rocky terrain toward the target compound. Intelligence had identified it as a gathering point for high-value Taliban commanders. The mission parameters were clear: secure the compound, identify the targets, neutralize if necessary. Emma Rivers moved like a ghost at the edge of the formation, her specialized Macmillan TAC-338 rifle secured against her back. Mitchell had assigned her the least favorable overwatch position, a rocky outcropping with limited fields of fire, far enough from the action to keep her out of the way. 5 minutes after the ambush began, Mitchell stared in disbelief at the scene before him. 12 enemy combatants lay silent among the rocks, each eliminated with surgical precision from impossible angles and distances. His team, which should have been decimated by the carefully planned trap, stood unharmed in the sudden, eerie silence. Through his tactical radio, Rivers' voice came calmly. Overwatch to actual. Area secured. All hostiles neutralized. You're clear to proceed to the objective. Mitchell looked up at the distant ridgeline where Rivers had repositioned herself, not where he had ordered her to be, but exactly where she needed to be. In 18 years of special operations, he had never witnessed anything like what he had just seen. This isn't just a story about war. It's about forgotten American heroes, the ones who changed history from the shadows, whose names never made the headlines, but whose actions altered the course of conflicts. It's about the underestimated, the overlooked, and the extraordinary few who defied expectations when everything was on the line. Alaska, 1999. The aftermath of the Cold War still echoed through America's military community, but in the remote wilderness, those echoes faded against the raw, unforgiving landscape. The cabin known as Ghost Point stood like a sentinel against the vast Alaskan wilderness. 50 miles from the nearest neighbor, accessible only by bush plane in summer and snowmobile in winter. To casual observers, if any ever ventured this far into the backcountry, it appeared to be nothing more than a well-maintained hunting lodge. They wouldn't notice the carefully designed sight lines providing clear fields of fire in all directions, the reinforced walls capable of withstanding significant firepower, or the multiple escape routes meticulously maintained through all seasons. Samuel Steele Sam Rivers had designed it that way. The former Army Master Sergeant had applied the same precision to building his home as he had to his record: 102 confirmed kills during Desert Storm and earlier classified operations. At 54, his frame remained powerful, his movements economical and purposeful as he stacked firewood outside the cabin's western wall. "Emma," he called, his breath crystallizing in the frigid morning air. "Check the sight lines on the North Ridge again. Something's off in your calculations." Emma Rivers, then 22, emerged from the cabin with her rifle case. Tall and lean, with her father's hazel eyes and her mother's delicate features, she moved with the fluid grace of someone perfectly adapted to this harsh environment. "The wind pattern shifted," she replied, setting up her equipment with practiced efficiency. I need to recalculate for the cross currents coming through the Eastern Valley. The Macmillan TAC 338 rifle wasn't standard issue for any military unit. It was something special, a precision instrument Sam had modified specifically for Emma's smaller frame and exceptional eyesight. The scope alone had cost more than most people's monthly salary, custom calibrated to Emma's unique visual acuity. The rifle is just a tool, Sam had told her when she first fired it at 14. Your mind is the weapon. Now, as she lay prone in the snow, watching targets through her scope at the private range they'd built in the valley below their cabin, Emma's eyes tracked movement with inhuman precision. These eyes could detect a flicker of motion at 1,500 meters through dense forest canopy. These eyes missed nothing. The wind flags scattered across the range danced in complex patterns, telling a story most shooters couldn't read. But Emma saw the invisible air currents, heat mirage, the subtle distortions that would carry her bullet off course if not accounted for. Cold bore shot, 850 meters, target 3, Sam instructed, watching through his spotting scope. Emma made minute adjustments to her position, feeling the cold seep through her tactical clothing. She slowed her breathing, finding the rhythm her father had taught her, the space between heartbeats where perfect stillness exists. The first shot cracked across the valley, echoing off distant peaks. The metal target 850 meters away rang with a satisfying ping before Emma had even registered the recoil. Center mass, Sam confirmed. Now make the same shot with a 50 mph crosswind. Behind them, a machine whirred to life, activating industrial fans that created artificial wind conditions across the range. Most shooters would need to completely recalculate, but Emma simply adjusted, fired, and hit the same target with equal precision. Sam had raised her this way after Catherine died. Emma's mother had been lost to a drunk driver when her daughter was just 6 years old, the 1978 accident occurring on a rain-slicked highway outside of Anchorage. The military had already claimed too much of Sam's life by then. He couldn't bear to leave his child to strangers while he continued serving. So he'd resigned his commission, cashed in his savings, and brought Emma to this remote place where the lessons that had kept him alive could be passed down without distraction. Your adjustment was 2 milliradians too aggressive, Sam noted as they packed up their gear in the fading Arctic light. In real-world conditions, that would have been a miss. Emma nodded, accepting the criticism without complaint. In the Rivers household, excellence wasn't praised, it was expected. Anything less was unacceptable when lives might one day depend on the skills being honed. What few understood about Sam Rivers was that his reputation as a lethal operator missed the deeper truth. He wasn't just deadly, he was ethical. Each shot he took in combat came after careful calculation of necessity and consequence. He killed because it was his duty, but he never forgot that each target was human. The difference between a good sniper and a great one isn't accuracy, he often told Emma during their evening discussions by the fireplace. It's judgment, knowing when to shoot, when not to shoot, and living with the consequences of both decisions. Back at the cabin, Emma cleaned her rifle with methodical precision. The walls around them displayed none of her father's military accomplishments. No medals, no commendations, no photos of him with his unit. Instead, hand-drawn ballistic charts covered one wall, while detailed maps of the surrounding wilderness dominated another. The only photograph in the main room showed Catherine Rivers, her smile radiant against a background of summer wildflowers. Emma had her mother's delicate features and determined chin, though the softness had been weathered away by Alaskan seasons. The first sign that Emma was different came when she was just 10 years old. Sam had noticed her scribbling complex equations in a notebook while watching caribou through her spotting scope. "What's this?" he asked, examining the pages of numbers and diagrams. "I'm calculating bullet drop and wind drift for different loads," she replied matter-of-factly. "The ballistics tables in your manual are simplified. I wanted more precision." Sam stared at his daughter with new understanding. The equations were university-level physics, far beyond what her correspondence courses covered. The girl hadn't just been learning to shoot. She'd been developing her own ballistic calculation system, more sophisticated than what many military snipers used. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. Emma shrugged. "From the books, and I watch what happens when we shoot. The bullet doesn't always go where the tables say it should. What makes an average shooter into a legend isn't the eye or the hand, it's the mind. and Emma Rivers' mind had evolved into the perfect ballistic computer. Where other shooters relied on experience and intuition, she saw trajectories as clearly as visible lines extending from her rifle barrel to the target. Wind drift, bullet drop, temperature effects, all calculated with computer-like precision in real time. By 15, Emma could consistently hit targets at 1,200 meters under varying weather conditions, a feat many experienced military snipers couldn't match. Her extraordinary mathematical mind processed ballistic calculations instantaneously. Where others saw chaos in the variables affecting a long-distance shot, Emma perceived patterns and solutions with mathematical clarity. But Sam's training went beyond technical proficiency. He instilled in her a moral framework that would guide her abilities. A sniper doesn't just take lives, he explained one night as they sat by the fire. A sniper protects teammates. Every bullet carries an ethical responsibility. He taught her to view her gift as both a blessing and a burden. The power to end life from great distance required a solemn understanding of consequence. Emma learned to calculate not just trajectories, but implications, to weigh the moral calculus of each shot alongside the physical variables. During wilderness excursions, Sam occasionally shared stories from his military days. Not the sanitized heroics civilians expected, but the complex realities of his profession. He described Carlos Hathcock, the legendary Marine sniper who had set the standard for modern American snipers. Hathcock wore a white feather in his boonie hat, Sam explained as they huddled in a hunting blind, waiting for caribou. Enemy put a bounty on the white feather sniper. That's confidence, advertising your presence to people trying to kill you. These stories connected Emma to a lineage she couldn't yet understand, a tradition of American warriors who used precision and patience rather than brute force, men who carried the burden of taking lives while saving many more through their actions. Emma's abilities extended beyond marksmanship. Her father taught her to track wounded moose through blizzards, to follow wolf packs at a respectful distance, and to move through terrain without leaving traces. Even experienced trackers could follow. By 17, she could survive alone in the wilderness for weeks, becoming as much a part of the landscape as the ancient pines and granite outcroppings. The technical details that confounded other shooters came naturally to Emma. She intuitively accounted for third-order wind effects, the subtle shifts caused when wind flows around terrain features. She calculated for Coriolis effect, the minute deviation caused by the Earth's rotation. She even adjusted for spin drift, the tendency of bullets to drift slightly in the direction of their spin over extreme distances. What others considered theoretical ballistic science, Emma applied with practical precision. Each shot became a complex mathematical equation solved in real time, variables shifting with each breath of wind or change in barometric pressure. "Your breathing's off," Sam would say, his voice graveled by years in Arctic winters. "You're fighting the cold instead of using it." Emma made no reply. Words were luxury items in the Rivers household, used sparingly and with purpose. Instead, she slowed her breath, finding the rhythm her father had taught her, the space between heartbeats where perfect stillness exists. At 16, Emma's life changed when a bush plane delivered a package containing advanced ballistics texts, specialized reloading equipment, and a letter offering early admission to the University of Alaska's Wilderness Studies program. The sender was Colonel James Harrison, a former comrade of her father's from Desert Storm. Harrison had recognized Emma's potential after Sam had sent him some of her ballistic calculations, work that rivaled or surpassed that of military ballistic experts. "Your father and I served together during some of the most classified operations of the Gulf War," Harrison wrote in his letter. "The skills he's teaching you shouldn't be lost to the next generation." Emma chose education, though she insisted on completing her high school equivalency and taking college courses remotely for the first year. "The mountains will still be here," Sam assured her. "Some lessons can only be learned elsewhere." When she finally left for the Fairbanks campus at 17, Emma Rivers carried more than her father's modified TAC 338 and hand-loaded ammunition. She carried a worldview shaped by wilderness solitude and military precision, a perspective both broader and more focused than her future peers could comprehend. In the shadowy world of covert warfare, names like Carlos Hathcock became legends. But men like Sam Rivers, who carried out missions that would never be acknowledged, remained unsung heroes. The disconnect between public recognition and actual service was a lesson Emma absorbed early. True excellence rarely sought the spotlight. The university campus felt like a foreign country. Too many people, too much noise, buildings that blocked the horizon in every direction. Emma moved through this new environment like the ghost her father had trained her to be, observing everything, revealing little, always aware of exits and cover. Her professors quickly recognized they had someone extraordinary in their classes. Emma's understanding of wilderness ecosystems wasn't theoretical. She'd lived inside them. Her grasp of physics, particularly as it related to ballistics, bordered on intuitive genius. What they couldn't see was how she struggled with the social dimensions of campus life, where survival required entirely different skills. Only in the university's small shooting club did Emma find a familiar rhythm. The first time she stepped onto the range, the club president, a former Army marksman, watched in disbelief as she put 5 shots through the same ragged hole at 1,000 yards, compensating for a tricky crosswind that had been throwing off experienced shooters all day. "Who taught you to shoot like that?" he asked when she finished. "My father," Emma replied simply, already breaking down her rifle for cleaning. Word spread. Soon, military recruiters were appearing at the range when she practiced. Harrison made periodic visits, watching her progress from a distance, occasionally offering guidance that connected her father's practical lessons with the formal education she was receiving. During her 3rd year at university, psychological testing revealed what Emma had long suspected about herself. The university counselor explained it clinically. "You show markers for a specific neurological difference, difficulty with certain types of verbal processing, but exceptional visual spatial reasoning and mathematical ability." In practical terms, this meant Emma sometimes struggled with rapid verbal instructions, but could mentally calculate bullet trajectories, accounting for multiple variables instantly. She could become lost in a new building, yet navigate flawlessly through wilderness using only stars and terrain features. These weren't disabilities, but differences, specialized adaptations her brain had developed. "Your mind works differently," the counselor explained. "No better or worse, just optimized for different tasks." This revelation coincided with her final project, a revolutionary approach to extreme long-range shooting that combined her intuitive understanding of ballistics with mathematical models she developed. The paper caught the attention of military ballistics experts who recognized its practical applications for combat sniping. Upon graduation, Emma made a decision that surprised even her father. She enlisted in the United States Army. Fort Benning, Georgia was a shock to Emma's system. After years in Alaska's vastness, the humid, crowded military base felt suffocating. Basic training introduced her to a structured world of shouted orders, strict timetables, and constant human proximity. For someone raised in isolation, it was psychological torture. Her drill sergeants initially dismissed the quiet, slender woman from Alaska. Staff Sergeant Frank Miller, a barrel-chested veteran with 3 combat tours in Afghanistan, took particular pleasure in pushing her to her limits, certain she would break. "Rivers," he bellowed during their 2nd week of training, "you think those skinny arms can drag a wounded comrade to safety? My grandmother has more muscle tone." Emma responded by completing every physical challenge with mechanical efficiency, not the fastest, but relentlessly consistent, never complaining, never faltering. Her wilderness-hardened body adapted to military demands while others faltered in the Georgia heat. But Alaska had forged a different kind of strength, not muscle power, but an unbreakable endurance and persistence. Where other recruits sought rest at every opportunity, Emma's internal discipline never wavered. Years of lying motionless for hours in sub-zero temperatures had built a mental fortitude that Georgia's drill sergeants couldn't crack. The shooting range revealed the first hint of her exceptional abilities. Using standard-issue M4 carbines, trainees were expected to qualify by hitting 23 of 40 targets at varying distances. Most struggled to meet the minimum requirement. Emma hit 40 of 40, placing each shot in the center mass of silhouette targets ranging from 50 to 300 meters. When ordered to repeat the qualification to verify it wasn't a fluke, she produced identical results. Sergeant Miller studied her targets with narrowed eyes. "Lucky day, Rivers." "No, Sergeant," she replied evenly. "Just fundamentals." Word traveled quickly through the training cadre. By the 3rd week, senior instructors were appearing to observe the quiet woman from Alaska. Behind her back, other recruits whispered about special treatment and favoritism. Emma ignored the talk, focusing instead on mastering military protocols that felt foreign to her wilderness-trained instincts. Her most significant challenge wasn't physical, but social. Basic training demanded teamwork, communication, and coordination, skills that hadn't been necessary in the Alaskan backcountry. Emma observed her fellow trainees carefully, analyzing their interactions like she would study animal behavior in the wild. She found an unexpected ally in Lauren Chen, a compact woman from Boston with engineering degrees from MIT. Chen recognized something in Emma's methodical approach to problems. "You see patterns differently, don't you?" Chen asked one night as they cleaned their rifles. "Not better or worse, just differently." Emma nodded, surprised by the insight. "My brain processes things in its own way." "Neurodiversity?" Chen said. "My brother's the same. Can't remember faces, but can rebuild an engine blindfolded. Military needs people who think outside standard parameters." This small connection provided context for Emma's isolated upbringing, helping her navigate the social complexities of military life. Chen understood what it meant to be constantly underestimated, to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Advanced individual training brought Emma to the Army's sniper school, where her skills truly shone. The lead instructor, First Sergeant Ramirez, had seen thousands of snipers come through his program. None like Emma Rivers. Sniper school tested more than marksmanship. Students endured grueling field exercises designed to push their physical and mental limits. They learned to remain motionless for hours, control their breathing in extreme conditions, and calculate shot corrections for wind, temperature, and barometric pressure. Emma excelled in ways that astonished even veteran instructors. Where other students relied on ballistic calculators, she performed complex equations mentally, adjusting for variables that many snipers didn't even consider. Her stalking techniques, developed through years of hunting in the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness, were nearly flawless. "She moves like smoke," one instructor commented, after failing to spot her during a stalking exercise despite knowing her approximate position. The defining moment came during the final qualification test, a series of shots at unknown distances against partially concealed targets under challenging weather conditions. Most students struggled to achieve 70% accuracy. Emma hit 100% of her targets, including a final shot at 1,476 meters that instructors had included as an almost impossible challenge. The bullet found its mark despite swirling winds and fading light conditions that would have deterred most snipers from even attempting the shot. 3 weeks into sniper school, Emma was approached by an elderly man in civilian clothes observing training from the sidelines. His weathered face and watchful eyes spoke of decades of experience, though he wore no uniform or insignia. "That was some shooting yesterday, Rivers," he said, extending a hand. "Master Sergeant Wallace Johnson, retired. Most folks call me Old Ghost." Emma shook his hand, noting the calluses that marked him as a fellow shooter. "Thank you, sir." "No sir necessary. Left all that behind years ago." Wallace studied her with keen interest. "You're Sam Rivers' daughter, aren't you? Steel Sam from Desert Storm." Emma's expression revealed nothing, but her attention sharpened. Few people made the connection to her father, whose most significant operations remain classified. "He taught you well," Wallace continued. "Your breathing control is textbook perfect. Finger discipline better than most instructors here." "You knew my father?" Emma asked carefully. Wallace nodded, a faint smile crossing his lined face. "Ran some operations together in '91, Desert Storm, Valley Shadow Mission. Your father made a shot at 100 meters in a sandstorm that saved my team. Most called it luck. Those of us who knew him understood it was something else entirely." The old man was now a civilian contractor, brought in to evaluate the sniper program and recommend improvements. At 68, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. "Not all heroes get their names in history books, young lady," Wallace told her one evening as they discussed advanced stalking techniques. "The best ones are often those nobody knows about." Wallace became an unexpected mentor, recognizing in Emma the same extraordinary gifts he had seen in her father decades earlier. Where the official instructors taught by the book, Wallace shared insights earned through bitter experience across multiple conflicts. The day before graduation, he handed Emma a worn, leather-bound notebook. "The Sniper's Gospel," he called it. Inside were handwritten notes from generations of elite American snipers, including Carlos Hathcock himself, each passing down lessons that couldn't be found in any official manual. Your father contributed to this, Wallace said. Now it's your turn to add what you learn. He taught her techniques rarely shared outside the most elite circles. How to read mirage to estimate wind conditions by observing heat waves rising from the ground. How to calculate quarter-value wind adjustments for crosswinds coming at various angles. How to time shots between heartbeats for maximum stability. These weren't just technical skills, but an inheritance, a lineage of American warriors who had perfected the art of precision under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Emma Rivers's deployment to Afghanistan came through a special program testing female snipers in combat units. The military, responding to changing battlefield dynamics, had reluctantly opened certain combat roles to women on an experimental basis. For Emma, it represented the culmination of everything she had trained for, the opportunity to apply her extraordinary skills in actual combat conditions. For the men of Captain Ryan Mitchell's SEAL team, it represented an unwelcome disruption to their established protocols. The Korengal Valley stretched before them like an ancient trap, its steep ridges and narrow passages the site of some of the most intense fighting in the long Afghan conflict. The terrain was brutal, sharp rocks and sparse vegetation offering minimal cover, elevations that tested even the most physically fit operators, and sightlines that could turn deadly in an instant. Mitchell had commanded men in combat from Iraq to Somalia. Now the Pentagon wanted him to take a woman into the highest level missions? His skepticism wasn't personal. It was born from experience. Combat units functioned on absolute trust, forged through shared hardship and proven reliability. Emma Rivers was an unknown quantity, imposed from above by commanders who wouldn't be on the ground when bullets started flying. Rivers, Mitchell addressed her during the mission briefing, his tone professional but cool. You'll establish overwatch here, approximately 800 meters from the target building. Your job is simple. Prevent anyone from leaving once we breach. The actual assault is our responsibility. Emma studied the tactical map with careful attention. The position Mitchell had assigned was suboptimal. Limited fields of fire, exposed to potential counter-snipers, with challenging crosswinds created by the surrounding terrain. She could see at least 3 superior alternatives. Sir, she said, keeping her voice neutral, the North Ridge would provide better coverage of all potential escape routes and offer more concealment for my position. The room fell silent. No one questioned Mitchell's tactical decisions. The commander's expression hardened. Specialist Rivers, I've been planning kill or capture missions since you were in grade school. You'll take the position assigned and follow orders precisely. This isn't a training exercise where you get participation trophies for suggestions. Emma nodded professionally, though her mind was already calculating the alternative approaches. She'd studied the intelligence reports more thoroughly than anyone realized, recognizing patterns that suggested this operation might encounter complications beyond what Mitchell anticipated. As the team moved out in the pre-dawn darkness, Emma felt the weight of their distrust. She was the outsider, the experiment, the potential liability. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. In combat, the only thing that matters is performance. Everything else is noise. The mission began at 0300 hours, a moonless night perfect for both concealment and the enhanced optics Emma had calibrated specifically for these conditions. While Mitchell's assault team approached the target building from the west, she made her way to the assigned overwatch position, moving silently despite carrying 60 pounds of equipment. Through her thermal scope, Emma watched 8 operators advance in perfect formation toward the compound, a cluster of mud brick buildings surrounded by a stone wall. The intelligence briefing had indicated minimal security, perhaps 3 or 4 guards protecting the high-value target. But as Emma scanned the surrounding terrain, she noticed discrepancies, heat signatures where none should exist, movement patterns suggesting a larger force than intelligence had estimated. Most concerning, defensive positions that appeared recently reinforced, evidence of preparation beyond routine security measures. Overwatch to actual, she whispered into her radio using Mitchell's call sign. I'm detecting multiple additional heat signatures around the target compound. Possible reinforced enemy presence. Mitchell's response was immediate and dismissive. Maintain radio discipline, Overwatch. We have eyes on the objective, and see no additional threats. Continue mission. Emma bit back frustration. The assault team's ground-level perspective couldn't reveal what her elevated position and specialized equipment made clear. They were walking into a prepared defensive position with significantly more combatants than expected. In that moment, Emma Rivers made a decision that would change the course of the mission and her military career. She abandoned her assigned position, moving rapidly through the darkness toward a rocky outcropping she'd identified earlier. The new location offered clear sight lines to all potential enemy positions while keeping her concealed from counter-snipers. Reaching it required free climbing a near vertical rock face with full equipment, a challenge that would have deterred most operators. Setting up her rifle platform took less than 30 seconds, muscle memory developed through thousands of repetitions. Through her scope, Emma could see Mitchell's team was dangerously close to the ambush points. She had less than a minute to act before they would be caught in the deadly crossfire. What happened next would become legend among special operations forces, a moment when the impossible became reality through perfect skill and unyielding courage. When one woman, underestimated and overlooked, changed the course of battle through extraordinary ability and split-second decision-making. The ambush triggered exactly as the assault team reached the compound's outer wall. Muzzle flashes erupted from concealed positions, catching Mitchell's operators in a deadly crossfire. The night exploded with automatic weapons fire and the sharp crack of sniper rifles. "Contact! Contact!" Mitchell's voice carried controlled urgency over the radio, taking fire from multiple positions. "Fall back to Rally Point Delta." Through her scope, Emma could see the entire tactical situation unfolding. Mitchell's team was pinned down between the compound wall and a dry creek bed, taking fire from at least 12 different enemy positions. More fighters were moving to cut off their escape route, threatening to encircle the entire unit. Emma's specialized thermal optics revealed what the team couldn't see from their position: the carefully orchestrated trap closing around them. The magnification allowed her to identify individual fighters, establishing interlocking fields of fire, precisely placed to eliminate any possible escape route. "Overwatch to actual," Emma transmitted calmly. "I count 12 enemy positions with clear fields of fire on your location. Additional hostiles moving to block your exfil route. I can engage and create an extraction corridor, but request permission to proceed." In the brief pause that followed, Emma knew Mitchell was weighing impossible options. His team had no cover, limited ammunition, and dwindling time before they would be completely surrounded. "Negative, Overwatch," Mitchell responded between bursts of return fire. "Maintain your assigned position and await further instructions." Sometimes rules must be broken to complete the mission. Sam had taught Emma that from childhood. When the letter of orders conflicts with their spirit, saving American lives, the true warrior makes the hard choice. Emma settled into her shooting position, controlling her breathing as her father had taught her. Slow inhale, partial exhale, hold. Her finger took the first pressure on the trigger, muscles relaxed but ready. Her mind calculated distance, wind speed, temperature, and a dozen other variables simultaneously. The first target presented itself immediately: a fighter with a radio directing the ambush from behind a low stone wall. The distance was 547 meters with variable winds gusting through the valley. Most snipers would have hesitated, calculating adjustments. Emma simply knew. Her first shot broke the pre-dawn silence, the suppressed rifle making just enough noise to be heard by nearby combatants. The enemy commander dropped instantly, radio and weapon clattering against stone. His death created immediate confusion among the ambush force, temporarily disrupting their coordinated attack. Emma was already acquiring her second target, a machine gunner pouring devastating fire into Mitchell's position. The angle was more challenging, requiring her to thread her bullet through a narrow gap between two structures. Distance, 6 or 12 meters. The second shot produced the same result: immediate incapacitation. By her third shot, enemy fighters realized they were being engaged from an unexpected direction. Their organized ambush began disintegrating into confusion as precision fire eliminated key positions one by one. Emma worked methodically, prioritizing targets based on the threat they posed to Mitchell's team. Each shot was a masterpiece of technical precision. Wind conditions varied between targets, forcing her to recalculate for each engagement. Enemy fighters used terrain features for concealment, that would have made them invisible to less experienced observers. Emma tracked subtle movements, a briefly exposed elbow, the momentary flash of a weapon, predicting when and where targets would become vulnerable. Mitchell's voice crackled through her earpiece, a note of disbelief breaking through his professional demeanor. Overwatch, confirm your position and activities. Creating your exit route, sir, Emma replied between controlled breaths, already lining up her sixth shot. Suggest you prepare team for immediate exfiltration through the eastern corridor. I'll keep it clear. The sixth and seventh shots eliminated fighters attempting to flank Mitchell's position. The 8th through 10th neutralized a group trying to establish a blocking position along the team's potential escape route. Each shot came within seconds of the previous one, a rate of precision fire that seemed mechanically impossible. Within 5 minutes of her first shot, Emma had eliminated all 12 enemy fighters. The ambush that should have killed an entire special operations team had been systematically dismantled by a single sniper firing from an unexpected position. Area secure, Emma transmitted. Recommend immediate movement while we maintain tactical surprise. For several seconds, only silence answered her. Then Mitchell's voice containing something she hadn't heard before, respect tinged with amazement. Roger that, Overwatch. Team moving now. The remainder of the operation proceeded without further complications. Mitchell's team secured the high-value target and called for extraction. The original mission accomplished despite the ambush that should have ended in disaster. During the helicopter flight back to base, Mitchell sat across from Emma in the cargo bay, studying her with new eyes. The other operators maintained a respectful distance, occasional glances conveying a mixture of awe and reevaluation. 12 targets, 5 minutes, perfect shooting under impossible conditions, Mitchell said finally, his voice barely audible above the rotor noise. That shouldn't have been possible. Emma met his gaze without emotion. Just fundamentals, sir. Bullshit, Mitchell replied, but without heat. I've worked with the best snipers in the business. What you did out there was something else entirely. The debriefing at base revealed the full extent of the intelligence failure. The Taliban commander had been expecting them, reinforcing his position with experienced fighters specifically positioned to ambush assaulting forces. Without Emma's intervention, the after-action assessment concluded that Mitchell's entire team would likely have been killed or captured. In combat, who you are doesn't matter, only what you do. And Emma Rivers had just done the impossible. The dynamic within the unit shifted overnight. Where once there had been skepticism and distance, now there was a grudging respect. Emma wasn't seen as the female sniper anymore. She was simply the operator who had saved their lives when everything went wrong. That evening, Mitchell appeared at the door of Emma's quarters, the first time he had acknowledged her existence outside of operations. "Walk with me, Rivers," he said. Not quite an order, but not quite a request. They moved in silence along the base perimeter, the mountains looming dark against a star-filled sky. When they reached a relatively private area near the Eastern Guard Tower, Mitchell stopped. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. "I dismissed your capabilities based on preconceptions rather than performance. That was my mistake, and it nearly cost lives." Emma said nothing, recognizing that for a man like Mitchell, this admission represented a significant concession. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked after a moment. "My father," she answered simply. Mitchell nodded slowly. "Steel Sam Rivers. I should have made the connection earlier. His reputation still echoes through special operations circles." He hesitated, seeming to wrestle with something, then continued. "I served with a female intelligence officer during a hostage rescue operation in Yemen 6 years ago. Operation went sideways when our position was compromised. The officer was blamed for the intelligence failure that got 3 operators killed, including my best friend." The admission explained much about Mitchell's attitude toward female personnel in combat roles. He'd associated past trauma with gender rather than individual performance. "Was it her fault?" Emma asked quietly. Mitchell's expression darkened. "That was the official finding. I had my doubts, but the evidence seemed clear at the time. She was reassigned, eventually left the service." He shook his head slowly. Another good operator lost because someone needed a scapegoat. Emma recognized this for what it was. Not just an apology, but context for his behavior and perhaps the beginning of a reevaluation of his long-held beliefs. "Tomorrow's operation," Mitchell said, changing subjects abruptly. I want your input on the tactical approach. Your perspective today proved valuable. I won't make the same mistake twice." This simple acknowledgement that her viewpoint had merit represented a fundamental shift in their professional relationship, not friendship, not even complete acceptance, but the beginning of something equally important in combat: mutual respect based on demonstrated ability. The operation the following day proceeded smoothly, almost anticlimactically after the previous day's intensity. Emma's position provided perfect coverage as Mitchell's team secured a weapons cache without resistance. The intelligence had been accurate this time, though Emma's vigilance never wavered throughout the 4-hour mission. Back at base, Mitchell called Emma to the tactical planning room, where maps and satellite imagery covered the walls. The other team members were already gathered, their body language more open, more inclusive than before. "Rivers, walk us through the wind patterns in this valley," Mitchell said, pointing to their next target area. "You seem to understand these conditions better than our meteorological data." Emma approached the map, explaining the complex air currents created by the mountain topography. "The prevailing winds hit this ridgeline and create turbulence that flows down through these 3 valleys. Any shot from this position would require compensation for unpredictable crosswinds." The operators listened with genuine interest, recognizing the practical value of her specialized knowledge. What had initially been seen as an unwelcome disruption to their unit was now being integrated as a valuable tactical asset. Over the next 3 weeks, Emma participated in 5 more operations, each more successful than the last. Her role expanded beyond simple overwatch to include mission planning and tactical decision-making. Mitchell increasingly relied on her unique perspective and extraordinary capabilities. The female sniper who had been expected to fail was redefining what was possible in special operations. 4 weeks after the ambush incident, Colonel James Harrison arrived at the forward operating base without announcement, bringing classified intelligence files and orders that bypassed normal command channels. "This briefing is eyes only," Harrison explained to Emma and Mitchell in the secure communications room. "What I'm about to share is compartmentalized at the highest levels." He spread satellite photographs across the table, revealing a compound nestled in a remote valley near the Pakistani border. Intelligence has identified this location as a training facility operated by former U.S. and coalition special operations personnel now working as private military contractors. They're providing advanced tactical training to Taliban and possibly Al-Qaeda fighters. Mitchell studied the images with professional intensity. "Mercenaries training insurgents. That's treason." "It's more complicated," Harrison replied, his weathered face grave. "These aren't just random contractors. They're operating under the banner of a private military company called Obsidian Shield, founded by this man." He placed a personnel file on the table. The photograph showed a muscular man with a shaved head and a distinctive scar running from temple to jaw. "Marcus Vega, former Green Beret, 3 Purple Hearts, Silver Star for actions in Kandahar. After his 3rd tour, he refused redeployment, claiming PTSD, disappeared for 2 years, then resurfaced with Obsidian Shield." Emma noted Mitchell's reaction to the name, a subtle tensing of his jaw muscles, a slight narrowing of his eyes. Recognition certainly, but tinged with something deeper: personal history. "You know him?" she observed quietly. Mitchell nodded, his expression hardening. "We served together. Yemen hostage rescue 6 years ago. The operation where we lost 3 men due to intelligence failure. When an American warrior betrays his ideals, only another American warrior can bring him to justice." The implications hung heavy in the secure room, the intersection of past and present, of personal history and current threat. Harrison exchanged a glance with Mitchell that contained volumes of unspoken information. "That's partly why you're being briefed. This goes beyond standard insurgent activity. We believe Vega's operation connects to a series of compromised missions dating back several years, possibly including Yemen." Emma processed this information, connecting it to Mitchell's earlier disclosure about the female intelligence officer who had been blamed for the Yemen failure. Now Harrison was suggesting a different explanation, one that implicated Vega and potentially others within the special operations community. "Your mission," Harrison continued, "is to positively identify Vega and, if confirmed, eliminate him. This operation is completely deniable. No official record will exist. If you are captured or killed, the U.S. government will disavow all knowledge of your activities. Emma studied the intelligence photographs with professional detachment, evaluating distances, terrain features, and potential shooting positions. The compound resembled a miniature version of U.S. Special Operations training facilities, complete with shooting ranges, obstacle courses, and mock urban environments. Security assessment? She asked. Approximately 15 personnel, most with special operations backgrounds from various NATO countries, Harrison replied. These aren't insurgents with AKs. They're trained professionals with advanced equipment and tactical awareness. Harrison provided them with specialized equipment for the mission. A state-of-the-art ghillie suit designed specifically for the harsh Afghan terrain, Raufoss Mk211 armor-piercing rounds capable of penetrating light armor, and advanced surveillance gear. Insertion options? Mitchell asked, tracing approach routes on the satellite imagery. Halo dropped 10 miles out, night movement to the ridge overlooking the compound, Harrison explained. Intelligence confirms Vega follows a morning routine, Euro 7:30 inspection of the training grounds, followed by a staff meeting in the main building. That's your window. As Harrison outlined additional mission parameters, Emma's analytical mind processed the tactical challenges. The compound's location provided natural defensive advantages. Limited approach routes, elevated position with clear fields of fire, minimal cover for advancing forces. More concerning was the likelihood of counter-sniper positions given the professional nature of the security personnel. Time frame? Mitchell asked. You deploy in 48 hours, Harrison answered. This situation represents an immediate threat to ongoing operations throughout the region. Every day Vega trains insurgents, coalition lives are at risk. After Harrison departed, Mitchell remained in the secure room, studying the intelligence files with unusual intensity. Emma observed his behavior with quiet interest. The commander's typical, decisive confidence had been replaced by something more contemplative. You have reservations about this mission, she noted. Mitchell looked up sharply, then sighed. Not about the mission itself, about the context. He gestured to the files. Vega was one of us, an operator who served with distinction through multiple deployments. Something happened to turn him against everything he once stood for. That doesn't just happen without reason. You think there's more to this story than we're being told, Emma suggested. I know there is. Mitchell's voice carried absolute certainty. The Yemen operation, everything about it was wrong from the start. Bad intelligence, compromised insertion, enemy forces exactly where they shouldn't have been. The official investigation blamed our intelligence officer, but certain details never added up. He hesitated, then made a decision. Her name was Captain Sarah Winters, top of her class at intelligence school. Flawless record before Yemen. After the failure, she tried to launch her own investigation, claimed there was evidence of information being leaked to enemy forces. 2 weeks later, she was diagnosed with PTSD, deemed psychologically unfit for duty, and eventually forced out of the service. Emma processed this information, connecting it with the larger pattern. And now we're told that Vega, who was on that same mission, is working with enemy forces. Mitchell nodded grimly. Exactly. What if Winters was right? What if someone was feeding intelligence to the enemy? What if that someone was Vega? The implication was clear. If Vega had been compromised during the Yemen operation, then Captain Winters had been wrongfully blamed for the failure that cost 3 American lives. More disturbing was the possibility that someone had deliberately suppressed her investigation to protect Vega or others involved in the betrayal. This mission isn't just about eliminating a threat, Mitchell concluded. It's about starting to uncover the truth. The insertion went precisely as planned. A high-altitude, low-opening parachute drop under cover of darkness, followed by a careful approach through mountainous terrain. Emma and Mitchell's small team, just 4 operators plus herself, reached their observation position as false dawn lightened the eastern horizon. Through her spotting scope, Emma studied Vega's compound with professional detachment. The intelligence had been accurate regarding physical layout but had underestimated security measures. Motion sensors, surveillance cameras, and regular patrol patterns suggested a level of sophistication beyond typical private security operations. Most concerning was the presence of counter-sniper positions, elevated platforms with clear fields of fire covering likely approach routes. Vega clearly understood the threat long-range precision shooting posed to his operation. Target building is 1,000 876 meters from our position, Emma noted, calculating angles and elevations. Winds variable, predominantly from the northwest at approximately 8 to 12 mph. Temperature differential between valleys suggests possible mirage effects during midday operations. Mitchell studied her calculations with newfound respect. Can you make that shot? Emma considered the variables honestly. The distance exceeded her previous combat engagements, and the crosswinds would create significant challenges. Yet the fundamentals remained the same. Physics didn't change, only the degree of precision required. Yes, she answered, but I'll need to relocate to that ridgeline for the final firing position. She indicated a rocky outcropping approximately 300 meters closer to the target, still well outside typical engagement ranges, but offering better stability and wind conditions. Mitchell studied the proposed position through his binoculars. That puts you dangerously close to their patrol routes. It's necessary for shot certainty, Emma replied simply. After a moment's consideration, Mitchell nodded. Move at dusk. We'll maintain overwatch from here. As darkness fell, Emma prepared for her stalk, the careful, methodical movement toward a firing position that represented the true art of sniper operations. She applied camouflage paint to her face and hands, checked her equipment for any reflective surfaces, and studied the terrain one final time. Expect Vega at the training ground at approximately 0730 hours, Mitchell reminded her. Standing pattern is a 30-minute inspection, followed by a meeting in the main building. Your window will be brief. Emma nodded, her focus already narrowing to the task ahead. The 3-hour stalk through enemy territory would require every wilderness skill her father had taught her. Moving silently across rocky terrain, remaining invisible despite multiple security systems, reaching the perfect firing position without detection. She moved like her namesake, a ghost in the Afghan night, placing each foot with deliberate precision, freezing into absolute stillness whenever patrols passed nearby. Twice she lay motionless for over 30 minutes as security teams with dogs moved through areas she had just traversed, her scent masked by techniques learned from Alaskan hunters. The rocky outcroppings she'd identified provided natural concealment and a stable shooting platform. Emma established her position with meticulous attention to detail, clearing the smallest pebbles that might shift during her shot, arranging her ghillie suit to break up her outline against the surrounding rocks, setting up her rifle with the bipod perfectly level despite the uneven terrain. Emma remembered her father's lessons about patience and self-control. A sniper's profession is patience, Sam had told her repeatedly. The target will appear when it appears. Your job is to be ready, physically, mentally, technically, for that moment, whether it comes in 5 minutes or 5 hours. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the valley in golden light that would soon create challenging shooting conditions as heat mirage developed. Through her scope, Emma observed the compound awakening, guards changing shifts, kitchen staff beginning morning preparations, vehicles being inspected for the day's operations. At precisely 0728, Marcus Vega emerged from the main building. Even at this distance, his physical presence was imposing. Tall and powerfully built, moving with the confident swagger of someone accustomed to absolute authority, he wore tactical pants and a tight-fitting t-shirt that revealed heavily muscled arms covered in tattoos. Emma tracked him through her scope, studying his movement patterns while making final adjustments to her firing solution. Distance, 1,076 meters, well beyond the current record for a combat sniper kill in the U.S. military, which stood at 1,620 meters. Wind quartering from right to left at approximately 10 p.m. with gusting potential. Temperature 68 degrees and rising, creating potential mirage effects. As Vega began his inspection of the training grounds, Emma established her shooting position. Body aligned with the target, rifle butt firmly seated against her shoulder, cheek weld perfect against the stock. She controlled her breathing using the technique her father had taught her. Slow inhale, partial exhale, hold. Through her scope, Vega's features became clear, the distinctive scar more pronounced than in photographs. His expression stern as he berated a subordinate for some perceived deficiency. Emma centered her crosshairs on his chest, the most reliable target zone at this distance. Her finger took up the first pressure on the trigger. Muscles relaxed but ready. In that moment of perfect focus, a detail caught her attention, something not mentioned in any intelligence briefing. Vega was wearing a pendant identical to the one her father had given her, the crossed rifles of elite army marksmen. The realization created a momentary hesitation, not enough to disrupt her aim, but sufficient to trigger deeper analysis. The intelligence had described Vega as Green Beret, not a designated marksman or sniper. Why would he wear the symbol of a community he hadn't belonged to? As Emma maintained her sight picture, Vega moved to a position where the morning sun illuminated his face more clearly. Another detail emerged, a second, fainter scar along his jawline that hadn't appeared in intelligence photographs. Something about its pattern seemed familiar, triggering connections in Emma's exceptional visual memory. The revelation hit with stunning clarity. Marcus Vega's facial structure, movement patterns, and the distinctive second scar matched photographs she'd seen in her father's personal files. Images of his Gulf War unit, specifically a young sniper named Michael Vance, who had served under Sam Rivers. Vance had been reported killed in action during a classified operation. His body never recovered. Yet here he stood, very much alive under a new identity, running an operation that betrayed everything he had once sworn to uphold. Emma maintained her firing position, mind racing through implications. If Vega was actually Vance, he had direct connections to her father and potentially to the intelligence failure Mitchell had described in Yemen. This wasn't just a rogue operator. This was something more complex, possibly a deliberate betrayal reaching back decades. Overwatch status report, Mitchell's voice whispered through her earpiece. Target is in the open. Do you have the shot? Emma made her decision based on mission parameters rather than personal connections. Confirmed. Target acquired. She exhaled partially, held her breath, and applied final pressure to the trigger. The rifle fired, its report echoing across the valley despite the suppressor. Through her scope, Emma watched the bullet impact center mass exactly as intended. Vega collapsed immediately, his subordinates reacting with professional speed to the unexpected attack. Target down, Emma reported calmly, beginning exfiltration, proceeding to extraction point Alpha. As alarm sirens wailed across the compound, she dismantled her rifle with practiced efficiency, erased signs of her position, and began the dangerous movement back toward the extraction point. The mission had been accomplished, but the questions raised by Vega's true identity would follow her back to base. Questions that would eventually connect to Mitchell's past and to secrets buried in classified files from America's longest war. A single shot doesn't just end a life. It opens a Pandora's box of secrets buried for 3 decades. What neither Emma nor Mitchell yet realized was that they had eliminated not just a rogue operator, but a key link in a chain of evidence that would lead to higher levels of military and intelligence command. A conspiracy that had sacrificed American lives for objectives hidden behind layers of classification and deniability. The extraction helicopter appeared on schedule, hovering briefly as Emma and Mitchell's team boarded under cover of suppressing fire. As they lifted away from the mountains, Mitchell studied her with new intensity. Clean shot, impossible distance, he noted as the helicopter banked sharply away from pursuing fire. You've just set a record for the longest confirmed kill by an American sniper in Afghanistan. The previous record was 1,120 meters. You just shot at 1,876. Emma said nothing, her mind still processing the implications of Vega's true identity. That information needed verification before she shared it, even with Mitchell. Some suspicions were too significant to voice without absolute certainty. Back at base, Colonel Harrison was waiting for debriefing, his expression revealing nothing as Mitchell confirmed the elimination of the target. Only after the formal report was complete and other personnel dismissed did Harrison address Emma directly. You hesitated before taking the shot, he observed, his tone neutral rather than accusatory. Why? Emma met his gaze steadily, making a calculated decision about how much to reveal. I observed inconsistencies between the target's appearance and the intelligence briefing. Specifically, Harrison Bristeon, Vega was wearing the crossed rifles pendant of Army marksman, despite no record of him serving in that capacity. Harrison's expression remained carefully blank, but a subtle tension appeared around his eyes. Interesting observation. Anything else? A secondary scar pattern inconsistent with photographs in his file, Emma added, watching Harrison closely for reaction. Possibly from an injury sustained after those photographs were taken. The colonel nodded slowly, revealing nothing. Good attention to detail. That's why you were selected for this operation. He gathered his files deliberately. The official record will show that Marcus Vega was killed during an airstrike targeting insurgent training facilities. Your involvement remains classified at the highest level. After Harrison departed, Mitchell joined Emma outside the debriefing room, his expression troubled. You saw something out there, he said quietly. Something you didn't report. Emma considered her options carefully. Mitchell had shared his suspicions about the Yemen operation and Captain Winter's wrongful blame. His personal stake in uncovering the truth made him both a valuable ally and a potential liability. I need to verify something first, she replied. There's a connection here that goes beyond what we've been told, possibly connecting to my father's service record. Mitchell studied her for a long moment, then nodded. When you're ready to share, I'll listen. In the meantime, we have another operation tomorrow. Standard counterinsurgency. Nothing like today's target. But I want you involved in the planning from the start this time. That night, Emma used the secure communications terminal to send an encrypted message to her father in Alaska, a carefully worded request for information about Michael Vance and any connection to operations in Yemen. The wilderness had taught Emma patience in hunting. Now she would apply that same discipline to tracking a different kind of prey, the truth behind Vega's identity and the betrayal it represented. 3 days later, Emma received a reply through secure channels. The message was brief, coded in the personal shorthand she and her father had developed over years of wilderness operations. Eagle, Snowbird confirmed, hunting grounds compromised. Check Cache Epsilon for migration patterns. Watch for predators in your territory. Raven. To anyone else, it would appear to be meaningless nature references. To Emma, it was confirmation of her worst suspicions. Snowbird was their code for Michael Vance. Hunting grounds compromised indicated her father believed military communications were being monitored. Cache Epsilon referred to a secure data storage location only the two of them knew about. And predators in your territory was the most alarming, a warning that Emma herself might be under surveillance or in danger. Emma deleted the message and cleared the terminal's memory, her mind already formulating the next steps. She would need to access Cache Epsilon without alerting anyone, including Mitchell, until she knew exactly what she was dealing with. The following week brought another mission, a raid on a suspected weapons cache in a remote village. This time, Emma was fully integrated into the planning process. Her input on approach vectors, fields of fire, and contingency planning treated with the respect it deserved. During the operation, Emma provided overwatch from a position she had selected, a natural observation post with excellent fields of fire covering all potential escape routes. The mission proceeded flawlessly, the team securing the weapons cache without resistance. But as they searched the compound, Emma made a discovery that sent a chill down her spine. Hidden among the weapons was a crate of American-made radio equipment, the same specialized communications gear used by Special Operations Forces. More disturbing was a photograph she found tucked into one of the crates, Marcus Vega meeting with a high-ranking Taliban commander. The timestamp indicated it had been taken just 2 weeks before Emma had eliminated Vega. "Sir," she called Mitchell over, "you should see this." Mitchell studied the photograph, his expression hardening. Vega was directly supplying them. This goes deeper than we thought. He secured the photograph with the other intelligence materials. We need to report this up the chain, but carefully. If Vega had supporters within the command structure, they might intercept the information. Emma finished his thought. Mitchell nodded grimly. Exactly. For now, this stays between us. We document everything, build our case, and figure out who we can trust. As they prepared to return to base, Emma received an urgent message from her father through their prearranged emergency protocol, a seemingly innocuous weather update that contained a coded warning. Storm front approaching your position. Seek immediate shelter. Eagles have been compromised. In their personal code, Eagles referred to military leadership. The message was clear. Someone high in the command chain was involved in whatever conspiracy Vega had been part of, and Emma was in imminent danger. There are wars recorded in history books, And there are wars fought in the shadows, where victories and defeats are never acknowledged. Emma Rivers had just been drafted into a shadow war that had been raging for decades, one that had claimed lives not on foreign battlefields, but in the corridors of power where decisions were made about who lived and who died in service of hidden agendas. That night, as she prepared for the next day's mission, Emma made a decision. She would need to trust Mitchell with what she knew and suspected. Together, they might have a chance of uncovering the truth before whoever had compromised the Eagles discovered how much they knew. The web of deception and betrayal stretched back decades, connecting her father's Gulf War operations to present-day Afghanistan, with threads running through Yemen and a dozen other conflict zones where American operators had died under suspicious circumstances. Emma Rivers, trained to hunt the most dangerous game in the Alaskan wilderness, now found herself tracking predators of a different sort, ones who wore friendly uniforms and spoke of patriotism while betraying everything America stood for. Her father had prepared her for this moment her entire life, though neither of them had realized it. Every wilderness skill, every shooting technique, every lesson in patience and observation had been building toward this hunt, the most important one she would ever undertake. Colonel Harrison summoned Emma and Mitchell to the secure briefing room at 0200 hours, the unusual timing suggesting urgency that couldn't wait until morning. His weathered face appeared more lined than usual under the harsh fluorescent lighting. Operation Silent Thunder, Harrison began without preamble, spreading satellite photographs across the tactical table. Intelligence has identified a high-level Taliban gathering at this compound near the Pakistani border. Multiple commanders and possibly their regional coordinator will be meeting to plan their spring offensive. Emma studied the imagery with practiced precision, noting terrain features, potential shooting positions, and likely security arrangements. The compound was nestled in a narrow valley surrounded by steep ridgelines that offered both tactical challenges and opportunities. Insertion method, Mitchell asked. Professional as always, despite the early hour. Helicopter drop 20 clicks out, followed by ground infiltration, Harrison replied. You'll have soft-lam laser designators for potential air support if things go sideways, GPS jammers to prevent enemy coordination, and encrypted SATCOM for secure communications. As Harrison detailed the operation, Emma's instincts triggered warning signals. The intelligence seemed too precise, too convenient. Details about meeting times, attendee lists, even the sleeping arrangements of key targets. After the ambush they'd survived and the discovery of Vega's true identity, such perfect intelligence felt suspicious rather than fortunate. She caught Mitchell's eye across the table, recognizing in his slight nod that he shared her concerns. Neither voiced their doubts in Harrison's presence. If their suspicions about infiltration reaching high command levels were correct, operational security demanded extreme caution. Wheels up at 0500, review the packets, memorize the details, then destroy them, Harrison concluded. This operation could significantly disrupt enemy capabilities in the region. Success is not optional. After Harrison departed, Mitchell immediately swept the room for listening devices, finding none but still taking precautions. What's your assessment? He asked Emma in a low voice. The intelligence is too perfect, she replied. Detailed information about a secretive, high-level meeting obtained just in time for us to act on it, after what we've discovered about Vega and compromised operations. Mitchell nodded grimly. My thoughts exactly. The timing, the precision of the intelligence. It has all the markings of a setup. In warfare, inconsistent intelligence isn't a mistake. It's a sign of conspiracy. They spent the next 2 hours developing an alternative operational plan, one that would appear to follow orders while implementing completely different tactical approaches. If someone within the command structure was setting them up, their only defense was to change the rules of engagement without revealing their suspicions. We maintain the appearance of following the official plan, Mitchell decided, but we insert 10 clicks south of the designated LZ, approach from the opposite direction, and establish multiple observation posts rather than proceeding directly to the objective. Emma nodded. Observe first, engage only if we can verify the intelligence is accurate. Exactly. And we modify the communications protocol, emergency channel only, code words for actual coordination between team members. They briefed the rest of the team, 4 operators Mitchell trusted implicitly, veterans who had served with him for years. The men accepted the modified plan without question, recognizing the signs of potential compromise from their collective decades of special operations experience. The helicopter insertion proceeded through thinning clouds, the aircraft maintaining unusually low altitude to avoid potential early detection. Emma studied the terrain through specialized optics as they approached, comparing actual features to the satellite imagery they'd reviewed. Already, she could identify discrepancies. Recent construction not shown on their maps, altered vegetation patterns, suggesting camouflage positions, signs of human activity where intelligence had indicated vacant terrain. When the helicopter touched down at their alternate landing zone, Mitchell immediately implemented their contingency plan, splitting the team into smaller elements that would approach from multiple directions rather than the single avenue of approach specified in the official plan. Chang and Wilson, eastern approach, Peterson and Miller, western flank. The rest with me on central reconnaissance, he ordered, deliberately creating a more dispersed tactical formation than briefed. Rivers, establish initial position on the southern ridge, maintain flexibility for repositioning as the situation develops. Emma nodded, already moving toward the ridgeline designated as her observation position. The modified plan would make any prepared ambush less effective by presenting multiple smaller targets instead of one concentrated unit. More importantly, it allowed Mitchell to maintain communication with separate elements who could provide early warning if they encountered unexpected resistance. Reaching her designated position after a challenging climb, Emma set up her observation equipment with methodical precision. Through her high-powered scope, she studied the target compound approximately 2 kilometers away. What she saw confirmed their worst suspicions. The compound matched the satellite imagery perfectly. Too perfectly. No modifications, no signs of the security presence that would be expected for a high-level meeting. It looked staged, like a film set arranged to match their intelligence precisely while concealing the actual threat. Overwatch to actual, Emma transmitted using Mitchell's call sign. Target compound appears exactly as briefed. No visible security, no movement, no signs of recent activity. Recommend extreme caution. Mitchell's response was immediate. Roger that, maintaining distance and establishing observation post before approach. Through her scope, Emma continued scanning the surrounding terrain, searching for the discrepancies that would reveal the true tactical situation. Her attention was drawn to unusual patterns in the vegetation approximately 300 meters north of the compound, subtle differences in coloration that suggested recent disturbance concealed by carefully rearranged plant material. Adjusting her scope's magnification, she focused on these anomalies. What initially appeared to be natural rock formations revealed themselves as carefully disguised fighting positions, hardened installations that provided both cover and concealment while commanding perfect fields of fire over the most likely approach routes to the compound. More concerning was what appeared to be a sophisticated electronic installation partially concealed among the rocks, possibly signal intelligence equipment designed to intercept communications or trigger remotely detonated explosives. Overwatch to actual, she transmitted again. Confirm prepared positions approximately 300 meters north of the compound. Electronic equipment visible. This is an ambush setup. Mitchell's voice remained calm, despite the confirmation of their suspicions. Roger that, all elements hold positions. Do not approach the compound. After a brief pause, he added, implement contingency whiskey. Contingency whiskey was their code for the most radical deviation from the official operation plan, completely abandoning the original objective in favor of a counterintelligence mission. Instead of assaulting the compound, they would observe and document the ambush setup, gathering evidence of who had prepared it and potentially who had compromised their mission. Emma adjusted her position slightly, settling in for extended observation rather than immediate action. Through her scope, she methodically cataloged the defensive preparations, counting fighting positions, identifying weapon systems, noting the placement of what appeared to be command and control elements. The sophistication of the setup confirmed their worst suspicions. This wasn't a hastily prepared Taliban ambush, but a professional military operation with advanced equipment and tactical positioning that reflected intimate knowledge of U.S. Special Operations procedures. Someone had prepared a killing ground specifically designed to neutralize exactly the kind of assault package Mitchell's team represented. After 20 minutes of observation, Emma detected movement near the electronic installation. Three figures in clothing typical of local fighters, but moving with the disciplined precision that suggested professional military training. One carried himself with the distinctive posture of Western Special Operations personnel, despite his local attire. Movement at the electronic position, she reported. Three individuals, one appears to be Western based on movement patterns and physical build. Mitchell's response reflected their shared understanding of the situation's implications. Document everything. We need evidence of who's behind this. As if responding to some unseen signal, additional fighters began emerging from concealed positions throughout the area. At least 20 combatants taking up pre-planned positions in an interlocking defensive network designed to create kill zones along all potential approach routes to the compound. Their positioning would have trapped Mitchell's team in devastating crossfire had they followed the original operation plan. More telling was the arrival of what appeared to be the command element. Three vehicles approaching from a canyon to the east not marked on any of their maps. Emma observed four individuals exit the lead vehicle, their bearing and equipment suggesting leadership status. The distance was significant, approximately 1,200 meters from her position, but her exceptional optics allowed her to capture useful detail. Three of the four wore local clothing, with the same inconsistencies she had noted on the other Western-appearing fighter. The fourth, however, wore the distinct uniform of coalition forces, multicam pattern with the insignia removed, but unmistakably American military issue. Overwatch to actual, Emma transmitted, her voice controlled despite the significance of her observation. Be advised, coalition uniform observed among leadership element. Repeat, individual in coalition uniform is present with enemy force. The implication was clear and devastating. Direct evidence of American military personnel coordinating with enemy forces to prepare an ambush against their own troops. Not just intelligence leaks or secondhand betrayal, but physical presence and direct cooperation with forces arrayed to kill U.S. special operators. Can you identify? Mitchell asked, his tone reflecting the gravity of the situation. Emma adjusted her scope's magnification to maximum, focusing on the individual in question. The distance and conditions made facial recognition challenging, but certain features were discernible. The man's height and build, his movement patterns, the distinctive way he carried his equipment. Recognition hit with shocking clarity. Confirm visual ID, she transmitted after careful observation. Individual appears to be Colonel James Harrison. The betrayal most terrible doesn't come from enemies, but from those you've trusted. The silence that followed conveyed the full impact of this revelation. Harrison, the officer who had recruited Emma from university, who had specifically requested her for the Vega operation, who had briefed them on this very mission just hours earlier, was apparently coordinating with enemy forces to ambush his own troops. Are you absolutely certain? Mitchell finally asked, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Confirmation approaching 90% certainty, Emma replied with professional precision. Distance and conditions limit perfect identification, but physical characteristics and movement patterns are consistent with Harrison. The strategic implications were staggering. If Harrison was involved in this conspiracy, it explained how operations had been compromised with such precision. He had direct access to all planning and intelligence, could manipulate missions and personnel assignments, and held sufficient authority that few would question his decisions. We need hard evidence, Mitchell decided after considering their options. Visual confirmation that will stand up to scrutiny. Can you close distance for better imagery? Emma calculated risks and trajectories with the same mathematical precision she applied to ballistics. Moving closer would increase identification certainty, but dramatically elevate her risk of detection. The defensive positions were oriented toward the expected assault routes, however, not toward her current location. Affirmative, she replied. I can reach the ridgeline approximately 800 meters from their position. Will require approximately 40 minutes of movement to maintain stealth. Proceed with extreme caution, Mitchell ordered. This evidence is now our primary mission objective. Emma secured her rifle and began the careful process of relocating, moving with the ghost-like stealth her father had taught her in Alaska's wilderness. Each step was placed with deliberate precision, her path selected to maximize available cover while avoiding loose rocks or vegetation that might betray her movement. The drizzling rain became an ally, masking small sounds and reducing visibility for any observers scanning the surrounding terrain. Emma used natural drainage channels and rock formations to conceal her approach, freezing into absolute stillness whenever the command group's attention seemed directed toward her general area. Reaching the closer ridge line required nearly 50 minutes of careful movement, but the position offered significantly improved observation capabilities. From here, Emma could clearly identify individual faces among the command element, and the evidence was undeniable. Colonel James Harrison stood among enemy fighters, gesturing toward tactical maps spread across the hood of a vehicle, clearly coordinating the planned ambush of Mitchell's team. More damning still was what Emma observed next. Harrison passed what appeared to be a satellite communication device to one of the other Western-appearing fighters, the kind of secure equipment only available to coalition forces. The implication was clear. Not only was Harrison physically present, but he was providing advanced military technology to forces arrayed against American troops. Using the specialized camera equipment they had brought specifically for contingency whiskey, Emma documented the scene in detail, capturing Harrison's face, his interactions with enemy personnel, and the transfer of military equipment. The evidence was irrefutable, sufficient to trigger the highest levels of counterintelligence investigation, regardless of Harrison's rank or connections. Overwatch to actual, she transmitted. Confirmation positive. Harrison is coordinating with the enemy forces. Evidence secured. Recommend immediate extraction and report to higher command. Mitchell's response reflected the gravity of their discovery. Agreed. All elements begin withdrawal to secondary extraction point. Maintain communications blackout except for emergency contact. Trust no one outside our immediate team. As Emma prepared to withdraw from her observation position, movement from the command group caught her attention. Harrison appeared to be arguing with one of the other Western fighters, their body language suggesting a significant disagreement about operational details. The confrontation escalated until the other man drew a sidearm, pointing it directly at Harrison's chest. Through her scope, Emma watched as the situation deteriorated with shocking speed. Harrison reached for his own weapon, but was too slow. The other fighter fired twice at point-blank range, dropping Harrison to the ground before turning his weapon on the other members of the command group. Situation change, Emma reported urgently. Harrison has been shot by one of his own people. Command group is turning on each other. The scene descended into chaos as the remaining Western-appearing fighters engaged in a brief but violent internal conflict that left two more dead. The last man standing quickly took control of the local fighters, barking orders that sent them scrambling toward defensive positions oriented in different directions than their original setup. They're repositioning, Emma observed. New defensive orientation suggests they're expecting an approach from the north rather than our insertion point. Mitchell processed this information quickly. Additional forces must be inbound. Possibly Harrison had backup plans he didn't share with his conspirators. His tone became more urgent. Extraction timeline just accelerated. All elements proceed to extraction point immediately. Rivers, withdraw now. Emma began her careful retreat, moving with even greater stealth now that the enemy forces were on high alert. The rapidly evolving situation suggested a conspiracy even more complex than they had imagined. Not a simple betrayal, but layers of competing agendas and double crosses that had now turned violent. As she navigated the difficult terrain, a new sound reached her ears, the distant thrum of helicopter rotors approaching from the north. Through gaps in the cloud cover, she could see 3 military helicopters moving fast and low, their profile identifying them as attack variants rather than transports. Overwatch to actual, 3 attack helicopters inbound from the north. Not ours. Repeat, not coalition aircraft. The helicopters opened fire before Mitchell could respond, their weapons striking the area around the command vehicles with devastating precision. The remaining fighters scattered for cover, returning fire with shoulder-launched missiles that forced the aircraft into evasive maneuvers. Emma used the chaos to accelerate her withdrawal, moving more quickly now that the enemy's attention was focused entirely on the aerial threat. The helicopters continued their attack run, systematically targeting the defensive positions Emma had identified earlier, suggesting they possessed detailed intelligence about the ambush setup. All elements continue to extraction point, Mitchell ordered over the team frequency. We're witnessing someone else's operation now. Our mission remains securing our evidence and reporting up the chain. The helicopter carrying Emma, Mitchell, and their team didn't return to their forward operating base as expected. Instead, they were diverted to a remote facility they'd never seen before, a smaller installation occupied primarily by intelligence personnel rather than combat units. Armed guards surrounded the landing zone, their weapons oriented outward in defensive posture rather than toward the arriving aircraft. A stern-faced woman in civilian clothing met them as they disembarked. "Commander Mitchell, I'm Director Catherine Hayes, Defense Intelligence Agency. We've been expecting you." Mitchell's expression revealed surprise briefly before returning to professional neutrality. "Ma'am, we weren't informed of any DIA involvement in our operation." "Because there wasn't supposed to be any," Hayes replied crisply. "Until 20 minutes ago, when your emergency transmission was intercepted by one of our surveillance platforms. You reported Colonel James Harrison was coordinating with enemy forces." Mitchell glanced at Emma, who nodded slightly, confirming that their secure transmission had apparently not been secure at all. "We have documented evidence," Mitchell stated carefully. "Visual confirmation of Harrison meeting with forces arranged to ambush our team, providing them with military equipment and coordinating tactical positions." Hayes studied them with penetrating intensity. "And you witnessed Harrison being killed by these same forces before a third party intervened with air assets." The specificity of her knowledge confirmed that their communications had indeed been compromised, raising immediate questions about who else might be monitoring their operations. "That's correct," Mitchell confirmed. "We have photographic evidence secured by Specialist Rivers." Hayes nodded to one of her staff, who escorted the rest of Mitchell's team toward a nearby building, while she focused on Mitchell and Emma. "You two, with me, now." They followed her to a secure, prefabricated structure isolated from the main base facilities. Inside, sophisticated communications equipment lined the walls, while a central table displayed tactical maps of the region. "What I'm about to share is classified at the highest levels," Hayes began once the door was secured. "For the past 18 months, the DIA has been investigating a network of former special operations personnel who appear to be selling tactical expertise and intelligence to hostile forces. We identified Harrison as a person of interest 3 months ago, but lacked actionable evidence to move against someone of his rank and connections. The Cold War never truly ended, it just transformed. Those who once fought for ideals now fight for money." Emma processed this information, connecting it to what they had discovered about Vega, Vance, and Captain Winters' aborted investigation. "Was Captain Sarah Winters part of this investigation before the Yemen operation?" she asked. Hayes's eyebrows raised slightly, the only indication of surprise at Emma's knowledge. "Winters was developing financial intelligence that first alerted us to the network. Her reassignment to Yemen and subsequent discrediting effectively derailed our investigation for nearly a year. By the time we reconstructed her work, the network had gone deeper underground." Mitchell leaned forward, his expression intense. "The Yemen operation, was it deliberately compromised to silence Winters?" "We believe so," Hayes confirmed, "though proving it has been nearly impossible. The same pattern has emerged repeatedly. Anyone getting close to this network experiences operational failures that damage their credibility, or worse." Emma removed the camera equipment from her pack, placing it on the table between them. "This contains clear documentation of Harrison with enemy forces earlier today, including the transfer of military communication equipment." Hayes accepted the device with careful hands, as if handling explosive material. "This may be the first concrete evidence connecting a senior officer to direct cooperation with enemy forces, potentially a breakthrough in our investigation." She studied Emma with new interest. "Your fieldcraft must be exceptional to get close enough for this documentation without detection." "My father taught me well," Emma replied simply. Recognition flickered in Hayes's eyes. "Rivers? Any relation to Samuel Steele Sam Rivers?" "My father." Hayes nodded slowly, making connections. "That explains Harrison's interest in your deployment. Your father served with Michael Vance during Operation Sandstone in the Gulf War, a mission Harrison helped coordinate from headquarters." The connection between her father, Vance Vega, and Harrison crystallized in Emma's mind. 3 men connected by classified operations decades earlier, their paths diverging but somehow reconverging around current events. "Vance didn't die during his last mission as officially reported," Emma stated rather than asked. "No," Hayes confirmed. "He was reportedly killed during a classified operation in 1991. Body never recovered. until he resurfaced as Marcus Vega running a private military company, training insurgents with tactics he learned in U.S. Special Operations. The same Marcus Vega that Specialist Rivers eliminated 3 weeks ago, Mitchell added, watching Hayes carefully for reaction. If the director was surprised by this information, she concealed it perfectly, which would explain the accelerated timeline we've observed in the network's activities. Vega was likely a key operational planner, and his elimination forced them to adapt quickly. Emma considered the implications of these connected events. Harrison was using official operations to eliminate threats to the network, assigning us to target Vega when Vega became a liability, then attempting to eliminate us when we became a threat. A logical assessment, Hayes agreed. But Harrison's own death suggests divisions within the conspiracy itself. The forces that intervene with air assets represent another faction we haven't fully identified, possibly a rival private military company or a state actor using contractors as proxies. Mitchell spread his hands on the table, absorbing the complexity of what they had uncovered. How high does this go? If Harrison was involved, who else in the command structure might be compromised? Hayes's expression grew more severe. That's the question that keeps me awake at night, Commander. We've identified financial connections to 3 defense contractors, multiple private military companies, and offshore accounts linked to at least 2 foreign intelligence services. The network appears to be selling expertise in intelligence to multiple clients, some with competing interests. Emma thought of her father's cryptic message, particularly the reference to Cache Epsilon, the location where he had stored sensitive documents from his military service. If Operation Sandstone connected Harrison, Vance, and her father, those documents might contain context crucial to understanding the current conspiracy. Director Hayes, she said carefully, my father may have information relevant to this investigation, specifically about Operation Sandstone and Harrison's early career. Hayes studied her thoughtfully. Sam Rivers was known for keeping his own counsel and his own records. If he preserved documentation from that era, it could provide historical context we currently lack. She made a decision. I'm reassigning both of you effective immediately. Your official status will be personnel recovery training at Fort Richardson, Alaska. In reality, you'll be pursuing this investigation through back channels while our official inquiries continue through classified channels. Mitchell straightened, military discipline asserting itself. With respect, ma'am, my team will be temporarily reassigned to security details that keep them safe and isolated from potential reprisals. Hayes interrupted. The network has already tried to eliminate you once. They'll try again when they realize you survived and have evidence of Harrison's activities. The logic was irrefutable. Harrison's conspiracy had tendrils throughout the special operations community. Until they understood its full extent, anyone connected to their discovery was in danger. When do we leave? Emma asked. Immediately, Hayes replied. Transport is being arranged as we speak. You'll be provided with secure communications protocols for contacting my office only. Trust no one else within the military or intelligence community until we've identified the full extent of the network. 6 months later, Emma Rivers stood at the window of a Pentagon conference room, watching snow fall softly over Washington, D.C. The city looked peaceful, almost serene, a stark contrast to the storm of revelations and accountability that had swept through the defense establishment over the past half-year. Behind her, Mitchell was concluding a briefing to a joint congressional oversight committee, his voice steady as he detailed the final connections they'd uncovered between corrupt military officials and the private defense contractors who had been purchasing their services. The evidence recovered from Sam Rivers' documentation, combined with Captain Winter's financial analysis and the materials we secured in Afghanistan, leaves no room for doubt, Mitchell stated. For nearly 3 decades, a network of officers and contractors systematically compromised operations to eliminate witnesses to their illegal activities, selling American military expertise to the highest bidder, regardless of national security implications. Emma turned from the window as the committee chairman thanked Mitchell and closed the session. The room emptied quickly, leaving just the 2 of them and Director Hayes, who had been sitting quietly in the back row throughout the briefing. That's the last one, Hayes said, approaching them. All the evidence is now on record, all the indictments filed. 28 arrests so far, including 3 general officers and the CEOs of 2 defense contractors. The network is completely dismantled. The journey to this moment had been arduous and dangerous. After leaving Afghanistan, Emma and Mitchell had traveled to Alaska, where they'd connected with Sam Rivers at his tertiary location, a hidden cabin deep in the Brooks Range that even Emma had visited only once before. Sam had been waiting for them, surrounded by additional documentation that completed the puzzle they were assembling. 3 decades of meticulous record-keeping, preserved against the day when evidence would be needed to expose the corruption that had infiltrated the military hierarchy. Together, the three of them had spent weeks correlating records, connecting financial transactions to compromised operations, building an airtight case that not even the most powerful figures in the defense establishment could dismiss. The investigation had expanded rapidly once Hayes presented their evidence to trusted figures in military counterintelligence. Captain Sarah Winters had been brought in from civilian life, her previous work vindicated and her reputation restored. Her financial expertise had been crucial in tracing the complex web of offshore accounts and shell companies that had concealed the network's activities for so long. "What about the rival faction?" Emma asked Hayes. "The ones who eliminated Harrison?" "Former CIA Black Ops privatized after 9/11, Hayes replied. "They were running their own operation, selling intelligence to foreign governments while posing as patriots. Harrison's group caught wind of it, and they've been fighting a shadow war for territory and clients. We've rolled them up too. 14 arrests last week." Mitchell shook his head, still processing the scale of the betrayal they'd uncovered. All those years, all those compromised missions, all those operators lost because someone decided their oath had a price tag. "Not anymore," Hayes said firmly. "The investigation is continuing, but we believe we've identified every significant player in both networks. The remaining arrests are scheduled for this week." Emma thought of her father, who had declined to attend the Washington briefings, preferring to remain in Alaska. His contribution had been recognized privately by the Secretary of Defense, with promises of formal acknowledgement once all the prosecutions were complete. Sam had been unsurprised by the offer but uninterested in recognition. "The only medal worth having is knowing you did what was right," he told Emma before she left for Washington. "Everything else is just medal and ribbon." "What happens now?" Mitchell asked Hayes. "For the two of us, I mean." Hayes smiled slightly, the first genuine smile Emma had seen from the director. "That depends on what you want. Rivers has been offered a position with our Special Projects Division, designing new protocols for long-range interdiction and counterintelligence. And you've been cleared to return to active field command with a promotion to captain." Emma and Mitchell exchanged glances. They discussed their options during the long flight east, weighing the possibilities that would open up once the investigation concluded. "I think I'll take some time first," Emma said. "There's unfinished business in Alaska. My father isn't getting any younger, and there's more he wants to teach me before he can't anymore." Mitchell nodded. "And I've accepted a training position at Fort Bragg, implementing new operational security protocols based on what we've learned. The kind of infiltration we encountered can't be allowed to happen again." "Wise choices, both of you," Hayes approved. "Take the time you need. The positions will be waiting when you're ready." As they gathered their materials and prepared to leave the Pentagon, Emma felt a sense of completion that had eluded her throughout the investigation. The conspiracy had been exposed, the guilty would face justice, and the institution they had sworn to serve was beginning the long process of healing from the corruption that had infected it. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in a blanket of pristine white, nature's way of concealing the complexities beneath a clean surface. Emma knew better than most that such coverings were temporary. The truth always found its way to the light eventually, no matter how deeply buried. 3 weeks later, Emma stood on the ridge above her father's cabin, rifle at her side, watching the valley below for any movement. The morning was clear and cold, the kind of Alaskan winter day that seemed to crystallize the entire world into sharp focus. Sam emerged from the cabin, his breath clouding in the frigid air as he joined her on the ridge. At 54, he remained powerful and precise in his movements, though the silver in his beard had spread further since she had last seen him before Afghanistan. "Perfect shooting conditions," he commented, gazing across the valley to the targets they had set up the previous day. "No wind, excellent visibility, stable temperature." "Almost too perfect," Emma replied with the ghost of a smile. "No challenge in it," Sam chuckled, a rare expression of humor. "Then we'll have to make it challenging. Moving targets this afternoon, but first, I want to see what Mitchell taught you about counter-surveillance techniques. Your form was sloppy last time we practiced. Emma nodded, accepting the criticism without complaint, the Rivers family way. Mitchell had indeed shown her several techniques developed during his years in the field, methods that complemented but didn't replace the wilderness skills her father had instilled. He's a good operator, Sam said, as if reading her thoughts. Solid judgment. Puts the mission first, but doesn't sacrifice his people to do it. A rare combination. It was as close to praise as Sam ever came, and Emma recognized it for what it was. Approval of the partnership she and Mitchell had formed during their shared ordeal. He's accepted a position training new SEAL teams, she told her father, implementing the lessons we learned about operational security and counterintelligence. Sam nodded, satisfied. Good. The next generation needs to understand how these threats evolve. The enemies outside the wire are only half the battle. Sometimes the more dangerous ones wear the same uniform. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, surveying the vast wilderness that had shaped both their lives. Emma had declined Hayes's immediate job offer, choosing instead to spend the winter in Alaska with her father. The DIA position would still be there in the spring, but these months with Sam were irreplaceable, a chance to deepen her skills under his tutelage while processing everything that had happened. Mitchell called yesterday, Sam said finally. Captain Winters is heading up a new financial intelligence unit specifically targeting private military contractors. They've asked for your input on the protocols. Emma considered this new information. Sarah Winters had been fully reinstated, her reputation not just restored but enhanced by the vindication of her earlier suspicions. The woman who had been wrongfully blamed for the Yemen disaster was now leading efforts to prevent similar compromises in the future. I'll call her tomorrow, Emma decided. There are patterns in financial transactions similar to those I see in ballistic calculations, predictable variances that can be identified if you know what to look for. Sam nodded, unsurprised by the connection she'd made between seemingly disparate fields. He'd always recognized that Emma's extraordinary mathematical mind could be applied far beyond marksmanship. You've come a long way from that 10-year-old scribbling equations while watching Caribou, he observed. The fundamentals haven't changed, Emma replied. Just the applications. Sam turned to head back to the cabin, pausing briefly. There's coffee on the stove. When you're ready, we'll review the new ghillie suit design I've been working on. The standard issue has serious flaws for Arctic operations. As her father disappeared into the cabin, Emma remained on the ridge, her rifle a comfortable weight against her shoulder. The vast Alaskan landscape stretched before her, wild and unforgiving, but also strangely welcoming to those who understood its rules. She thought of Mitchell, Winters, Hayes, and all the others who had played roles in dismantling the conspiracy that had threatened the institutions they had sworn to protect. Different people with different skills, united by a common purpose, to expose truth and restore justice. In the distance, a gray wolf appeared briefly on a far ridge before melting back into the forest, a reminder that the most dangerous predators were often the ones you never saw coming. Emma Rivers had been trained to be such a predator, but one who hunted only those who truly deserved it. The legacy her father had passed to her, precision, patience, ethical judgment, had proven its worth beyond anything either of them could have anticipated when she was a child learning to shoot in this same valley. The skills honed in Alaska's wilderness had saved lives in Afghanistan's mountains and exposed corruption in Washington's corridors of power. Emma checked her watch. Time to return to the cabin to continue her education under the man who had shaped her into the warrior she had become. The world outside would wait for now. There would be other missions, other challenges, other moments when her extraordinary abilities would be needed. For now, she was exactly where she needed to be, in the place that had forged her, with the man who had taught her that the true measure of skill was not just accuracy but purpose. The ghost shooter of Alaska had come home, carrying with her the satisfaction of a mission completed and a truth revealed. Behind her, the targets waited in the valley below, silent sentinels ready to receive her bullets with perfect precision. Ahead of her, the future stretched out with possibilities she was only beginning to envision. Emma Rivers shouldered her rifle and headed toward the cabin, toward her father, toward the next lesson in a lifetime of learning how to make the impossible shot when everything was on the line.